Welcome again to the League of Women Voters, a program called Connect the Dots. The Missouri State Legislative session is going to begin very soon. Their 2023 session begins in early January. So today we're going to be interviewing a Boone County state legislator and talk to him about his priorities and plans for the upcoming session. And our guest is Adrian Plank. He's going to be representing the 47th District. And that includes a good portion of West and Northwest Boone County. I may have not have described it like you would. How do you tell people you're what area you're representing?
Well, it got redrawn, so it got redrawn into the 4th Ward in Columbia. It includes Huntsdale, which I don't know if I've ever mentioned Huntsdale before, but it needs to be mentioned. Roachport, Harrisburg, and Sturgeon. Sturgeon's new to the district.
You've run for a position before, and this is the first time you've won. What are your feelings? What has it felt like now that you've won the election and are really getting ready within a few days and weeks to go to Jefferson City?
Oh my. Well, I've been at it a long time. I've been working to make change for a long time. And so it feels good to win. So as soon as we got the results, I was obviously excited, but you know what? Calm comes quick, information comes quicker, and so we've been bombarded with lots of information and lots of stuff to learn right away. I'm looking forward to session. I've already got my first bill up and going, so and I'm working on several others, so I'm excited about it.
Let me ask you if the things that I saw online were actually accurate or not. They might not have been, but as far as that bill that you pre-filed, I saw that the heading was modifies provisions relating to campaign finances.
Yes. So I run on the notion that super PACs shouldn't be allowed to purchase our policy or our politicians, and super PACs are a way for the very wealthy to hide from their responsibilities to the constituents. And so, when the Supreme Court says the states are going to be responsible for people's rights in that state, then we don't need outside influences buying our policies in our state. And so super PACs allow that to happen, and it allows it to happen on the ability for those people not to be traced, and so you don't know exactly who they are. And so I've introduced a bill that would sit them down to the same regulations as a PAC or an individual. So you're looking at $2,000 donations. You got to report anything over $500, and so it basically makes them accountable. And I think that's necessary if we're going to make headway on getting back things like women's rights and protecting LGBTQ community and that sort of thing. So I thought that in my mind, purchase policy was a big problem.
How do you learn how to pre-file a bill? I know that sounds like a pretty dumb question in a way, but I just wonder what's the learning process like to how to be a state representative?
Well, I would tell you to do what I did, and that's jump right in. and I'm a fan of jumping right in because you learn real quick, hands on. So what I did is I had for this bill, I knew that there had been previous bills similar. And so I took that idea and said, I want to do this to this bill, and I sent it to the research department, and they gave me more suggestions. And then they say, if you're okay with this, then we'll put it in wording that's constitutionally correct according to the Missouri Constitution. And so it's pretty painless, really.
Yeah. So when you're looking at, you're a Democrat, and Democrats are outnumbered more than 2-1 in the state house. What is your thought? How are you going to reach out to others and say, this is a good idea for all of us, not just a Democrat-backed bill, but this is something that I wish that you would give consideration and let us have a conversation about?
Well, let me start off by saying the tour was a big deal to me. And what I mean by that is all the freshmen, I'm a 49-year-old freshman, were able to get on a couple buses, collaborate. We didn't split buses up between Democrats and Republicans. And so I think it was important to have those conversations and find out that not only am I a real person that's not bound to the media and those types of policies, that we're real people concerned about our constituents, and that, believe it or not, we have some ideas that are pretty similar. And so I think that was important to get the freshmen together before they got into the establishment and pushed those policies that they've already been pushing for years. So yeah, I think that's important. We've got to work on the things we agree on, and that's part of being some of my policy, which pertains to farming issues and selling our Missouri farmers down the river for foreign entities. Most constituents and policymakers understand that we shouldn't be doing that. And so we need to work on those issues.
Foreign ownership of Missouri farmland is something that goes across party lines.
It does. And with that being said, that doesn't always happen at the top, at the state legislature, because they've been pushing policies that have allowed for the foreign entities to do that. And so now we've got to bring it to their attention that that's not the way to be doing business.
So I look at, and from past experiences of being able to hear you as you ran for office, I think that you have some positions that many, especially in Columbia proper and in the two big metropolitan areas, people are on board with. Choice and reproductive questions, guns and what makes sense there, and environment. You like to, and you've said, and you have been endorsed by the Sierra Club, and then human rights, and you mentioned LGBTQ plus issues like that. Those resonate with a lot of people. But the most newsmakers down in Jefferson City are those who take opposite positions than you on almost all of those, if not all of those issues.
Man, where do I start there? Yes, you're right. I knocked a lot of doors, and I've always knocked a lot of doors. But the Fourth Ward, there are many, many people that are LGBTQ and are concerned about women's rights, which means LGBTQ rights also. And so they understood, and I understand, that in the district, they need representation. And we need to fight for them because that's what a representative is supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, do we have a problem with the current legislature and the policies they push? Absolutely. And that's exactly why I needed to be there, in order to fight bad policy that marginalize people who are already marginalized. Mm-hmm. And so that's a big deal.
Have organizations or individuals, I could call them lobbyists also, do they start working on a state representative prior to him ever being sworn in to his position? In other words, I'm asking, since the election, have you had people contact you and say, hey, give consideration to this, or we'd like for you to maybe sponsor this type of legislation?
I had a couple today. There's a lot of lobbyists that know who I am, and I don't have a clue who they are. So yes, and I get emails. I got 2 emails today, one about health care and a couple bills that were introduced by Republicans that would expand a nurse's ability to help rural communities, which I haven't read the bills yet, but I assume if it really does that, then I'll be for that. So there's policies there that we can agree on. But like I said, I haven't read through those bills yet because I'm always skeptical with bills on the other side and what the true intentions are. And so we have to be careful, but we also have to work on them if we agree on them.
What's it been like to form? I don't even know what kind of staff you have, but you'd have to have some people, and I don't know what's provided, who's waiting out there, or how you go about setting up an office.
Well, that's interesting. I'm quite fortunate, which I feel I've been fortunate for several elections. I worked pretty hard in the election, and I tried to, and I've always tried to be a team player with many different campaigns because it needs to happen. And so I was fortunate enough to hire a gentleman by the name of Dustin Bax, who was the lead person here for the Trudy Bush Valentine campaign, who is also a part of the LGBTQIA community. And he's extremely organized, and I'm not, and I thought that ought to work, and so it does. He's already on top of things, and that's the one staffer we get to hire. Now we can do interns too.
Mm-hmm. What are you most looking forward to? We're getting close to having to wrap up this segment with you, but what are you most looking forward to come early January?
Oh, I think it's going to be the ruckus and buckus. On the 4th we get sworn in. We'll have the governor's ball that night, and so things are going to start clicking there, and we're going to in 2 weeks after that, we're going to find out what committees we're on. So we got a list, and we were able to pick our top 7, and so. But there's a bunch of committees, and some are more active than others. So I'm hoping I get at least 2 or 3 committees, and I don't know what they're going to be. I have an idea, but until it comes, I won't know exactly.
I always think it would be interesting to sit down with someone who is fresh into the legislative process and do it 6 months later and say, you've seen what's been covered from January through May by the media. Tell us what should have been covered and how it should have been covered. I think that would be kind of fun to have a roundtable that way.
Well, bring it. We'll have it.
We may just do that. Best of luck to you. Thank you so much for your time today.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the interview.
Adrian Plank is newly elected as the representative for the 47th District in the House of Representatives in Jefferson City. And again, the session will start early January. We'd like to thank the Ready for allowing us to use their space for today's interview. Thanks to the League of Women Voter members, Diane Suhler, Sharon Schneeberger, and Carol Schreiber for producing this show. And the series of state legislator interviews are on YouTube and will be posted on the League's website at lwvcbc.org. Thank you.